Welcome back to the Ride and Laugh podcast. If you love mountain biking, you are in the right place. Picture your last really fun group ride. You're back at the lot and the Stoke is high. Everyone's talking bikes and tech, trails, nutrition, jumps, gaps, drops. The Stoke is high. You're having fun. Well, you love bikes. We love bikes. Let's drop in. Sage, how are you?
Oh, Danny, I am so good. Oh my gosh, we had such an amazing week. I cannot wait to get into it. Danny, how are you doing?
I am doing awesome. I am excited to get into this podcast. We love doing every podcast, but sometimes we have rides that we're just really excited to share with the community and also progression stories. And yeah. So this is gonna be a good one, everybody. Buckle in.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's get right into it. We will get into our comments, and we're going to keep it somewhat brief on the comments because our listeners are so good that we've had many podcasts get derailed, which in a good way. Derailed is the wrong word. We've had many podcasts get
that's the wrong word.
Hijacked. That's not really good either. This all makes our listeners sound like they're against us. We've had several podcasts inspired by the comments.
Boom.
Inspired. Yeah. You think I would have prepared that a little bit better. So, well, anyone that's watching on the YouTube can see my background is different. I am at our Arizona facility. I'm at our condo. I'm here helping the family out. We got a lot going on. We got a lot balancing. And so kind of working remotely, and we're getting our podcast in. We are doing our weekly podcast. We're not missing it. So if the sound's a little bit different or the visual is definitely different, that's why. But we are moving forward with Ride and Laugh. We know everybody loves hearing us on Wednesday mornings, and we love getting the Stoke out there. So commenting on Ride and Laugh podcast number 28, how to dial in the perfect trail speed on your mountain bike to send big drops and features. And that was we were talking about a bike park day at our local Blue Mountain Bike Park, and there was a really big new drop. And we were talking about how to get the right speed for it. And then we were also talking about Rocky Ridge and how to get the right speed to try new features. And so the kind of the intuitiveness on dialing that in. So some of the questions that we threw out there where we were wondering about a downhill bike and how much of a difference it made and if it's worth renting one. And Zan at Sploosh MTB said downhill bikes are absolutely awesome at bike parks. If you haven't tried one, trust me, the most clapped out rental downhill bike is more stable and plush than our trail bikes. So what does he mean by clapped out, Sage? If you're new to mountain biking, what does someone say when they mean clapped out?
I got nothing. Know. I have no idea what I was like, hey.
Clapped out, I believe, is the suspension is like worn out. If you clap your suspension, it is your suspension has gone all the way compressed and makes that noise, that clap noise. It's clapped out.
Okay.
I believe that's where it comes from. Ride and Laugh 1 at Gmail, YouTube comments. Am I wrong about that? Clapped out. I thought it was when you completely use your suspension and could use a little bit more. Like when we went down I followed you into that really steep rock roll at Rocky Ridge, and I didn't know what to expect. And at the bottom of it, I said it clapped out my front suspension. You didn't know what I was talking about. You just let me say something, and we're just like, all right, I'm just not going to question this.
I thought we were so stoked that day. We had done so much clapping that you were just clapped out at that point. You were like, I'm clapped out. I got nothing left.
Of all the mountain bike things that we do, of all the terms that we use and fist pumps that we do and hand motions that we make, right? You know, like the devil's horns, fist bumps.
Yes.
There's very little clapping involved in mountain biking. Right?
No, that's not true. Well, maybe you're true. Maybe that is true.
Maybe there's an enthusiastic
clapping. Clap. Yeah, I think so. Was there clapping on Hans Ray? I feel like there was. There was a pretty big crowd. How about the drop? No, there was no clapping. That's corny. Yeah, nobody would be like.
Certainly not a golf clap. No, I mean, we're just much more enthusiastic than a clap. Maybe because we're wearing gloves too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, there's a lot of whooping.
With we are not getting derailed from our main subject. And immediately we go into the clapping conversation. Ride Live 1 Gmail, YouTube comments. Clapping? What's up with that? Clapping, yay or nay?
Oh.
Okay. All right. Maybe we do clap sometimes. I have to pay attention. Maybe we get so enthusiastic, but I feel like it's hooting and hollering. There's hugging. Maybe it's just our group.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just our group.
Yeah.
All right. But mainly clapped out. All right. Zan's comment was that the most worn out downhill mountain bike, I think, is going to feel better than your typical trail bike. And I totally want to try a downhill bike now. We've been talking about that. I have my Pivot Firebird in Arizona is a enduro bike. That's a big travel enduro bike. Yeah. I'd like to try that also. I haven't taken that to a bike park yet. But a downhill bike, like another level, right? Downhill bike, you're talking about what, 200 up front and like 190 in the back or something? Yeah. 210.
Super slack. Yeah.
So it would just absorb those braking bumps, right? I mean, would you even feel that at that point?
I mean, I have no idea. I would be really curious to try. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
I mean, like when I get my e-bike, I want it to be I want a full powered, big suspension e-bike. Yeah, but I guess it won't be downhill. It won't be downhill. But I do want a big travel bike for my e-bike. I just think that makes sense. So, and then Stan Mustard, who a regular, one of our listeners and a regular commenter, made an interesting point that he would like to rent a downhill bike at the next time he goes to a bike park because he feels like the braking bumps and the park is just wearing out his trail bike. So depending on what bike you have and how much you're going to the park, you know, it is a lot of abuse at some of these bike parks, right? Especially if you're doing the tech trails. My goodness gracious.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, I'm coming back from these things and my bike is just covered in like bike dust. You know, it's just like filthy with just like little, you know, and that gets into your shocks, into your gears. Yeah. So,
I was thinking more
honestly.
Go ahead.
Just like you're thinking just more from like jarring hits.
Yeah. I mean, my forearms are like numb by the end of the day. My feet hurt in ways that a trail ride never does. Like the amount of vibration. Maybe we should go through and like check all the bolts and screws after a bike park day. And it's certainly flying through brake pads. There's no doubt about that.
Who's braking? Come on.
Yeah. Well, that's true. And then the last comment I wanted to talk about was Chris Moore, who wrote into the Ride and Laugh One Gmail account and just told us an awesome story about finding the podcast. And he was interested in e-bikes and he was kind of like yelling at his phone, where's a good podcast about e-bikes? And he kind of stumbled on us and he stumbled on our e-bike episode and he started listening and he went back and he listened to all of them. And he just wrote in this really nice message about like how high the Stoke is on the podcast and how cool it is and inclusive. And he essentially he got an e-bike and he's excited to use it for fitness to get back into mountain biking and possibly analog biking as well in the future. Yeah. He says anything's possible. And so he's just a guy who was just really excited about the pod and wrote in a really nice message. And so I wanted to give a shout out to Chris. So thank you for writing in and sharing your story. And if anybody has a really cool story out there and they want to share it with us or just sharing the Stoke and inspiration, you can put it in the comments or you could Ride and Laugh One at Gmail. And Sage and I read this stuff and we will write back. So thanks, Chris, for writing in. And we are stoked. Yes. I can't wait to see and hear more about your e-bike journey. And we appreciate you listening and writing in. And everyone, we appreciate everyone listening and writing in. So
thank you, Chris.
Very cool story. Yes. And this is the time of the podcast. We talk about rating and subscribing on your podcast player and on YouTube. So go ahead and make sure that you're subscribed on YouTube and you hit the little notification bell and get the auto downloads and rate and subscribe on the podcast player because that does help us get out to more people and sharing more Stoke. Certainly tell your friends about us. And on Apple, you can actually go in and if you're an Apple listener, you can actually go in and leave an actual review. And those are really cool. And so we picked some of our favorite reviews just to read.
Yeah.
And the names that these reviews are from are always like just out there. And instead of saying, I'm not sure how to say this, or some of them I don't. And some of them are offensive and I can't say it because they just look too weird and I don't want to get, but I say like, if these are just random names or if people are picking them, I say like, go for it. Like, let's get the weirdest, craziest names we can. And this week's review is from Panda Biatch. Pause for dramatic effect. And the title is Charismatic. And the review just simply says, Just two very welcoming and charismatic characters talking bikes. Great podcast. So thank you, Panda Biatch. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Panda. Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, you know what? We just think you're Panda. No Biatch. Just Panda.
Just Panda.
All right. Shall we get into the rides that we did this week? Because there's a lot to talk about and some very exciting news, some very exciting podcast news, which I can't wait to share with everybody about a certain trail and a certain trail name. But let's get into our ride at Ceres, which was a weekday ride and came together in perfect timing so that Steve at Ben Spokes and Brian on a bike at B&E MTB were also able to ride with us. And really, like this, it really was like the stars aligned that these guys were able to ride with us and show us around. I have never ridden here before, but Sage had, and it was awesome. Tell us about the Ceres experience, Sage.
Yo, how about that? Both those guys just being available to just ride with us. I mean, I've ridden with Brian several times, and I've gotten a couple rides with Steve, but this was your first time, and I got to tell you, if you're going to have somebody lead you through Ceres or Ceres, whatever you want to call it, I mean, you couldn't pick two better guys. I mean, these guys know the jumps, they know the drops, they know the speeds, and they're so patient. They're so patient. So I mean, just totally blessed. It was a great day through and through. We got through some huge accomplishments and new things that I got to tell you, Danny, I was pretty impressed with ourselves.
Have you seen yourselves lately? You're incredible.
Have you seen yourselves? Oh, yes, my goodness.
We are unlimited. Things are happening. I had a couple of near catastrophic events, let's say, but both of them rode out. And overall, though, the Stoke was really high. And this was totally one of those rides where two guys that were really good at riding these trails, two guys that could do just about every feature there with their eyes closed really smoothly. And it was just like, oh, we have a chance to share the Stoke. We just have a chance to like ride with other guys that we know are going to be excited about this and are going to love this. I mean, it was a perfect example of like that mountain bike community. We were just like, oh yeah, I'd love to give you a tour of my local trails. I'd love to show you around. I'd love to show you how to do this. I'd love to lead you in. I'd love to give you the speed. So we had these like just two experts to at our disposal that day. And there was very little warm up. And then you're right into like just all these awesome lines. And so it starts off with like this great line that has a little kicker and then like a really cool hip jump that's not gapped. A few things to play on that are not gapped, and then bam, creek gap. So right away, like high consequence, but I watched you do it. You had done that one before. So I watched you do that. You don't like to follow. And then I followed Steve in, and each time it really felt fine. It just felt better and better. And I was just focused on the basic jump technique I talk about all the time, which is with these ramp jumps, it's really just staying centered, just not getting too far back. So Ceres are ramp jumps. They are not lippy jumps. What's the difference there? And what's your technique on ramp jumps?
Yeah, the ramp jump is just it suits me quite nicely. I love it. And well, I was about to say I'm not good at lippy jumps, but I'm getting better at lippy jumps, so I'm not going to say that.
Yes, you are. Yes.
But if I had a preference, I do prefer the ramp jump because there is no – if a lippy jump is shaped more like a C, a ramp jump is very even. So it's a very linear from A to B. The takeoff is very linear. So it doesn't like scoop you up. Yeah, it's a V, right? Yeah, here we go with the letters. Yeah.
We're using a C, then it's a V on its side.
That's right.
Picture a pump track on its side and a V on its side next to it. You guys live in some sort of different universe.
Yeah. The nice thing about a ramp jump is you really don't have to do anything. If you know the speed, you can hold your body position. You don't have to compress if you don't want to. But the nice thing about a ramp jump is if you know the speed, you can just let the bike do the work. And for me, I don't like to think about things. And that's why the ramp jump makes a lot of sense. The creek gap, man, that is a really tough warm up to kind of start with. But there really isn't a better way to warm up on this thing. And you did it fantastically. You were following Steve, who puts down a fantastic line. Brian does a great job too. I struggle following Brian because sometimes he's so good. He's so good that he like boosts jumps, and I don't have that boost. So whenever I follow Brian, I end up like casing drops and jumps because I don't have that boost and he's boosting. So Steve, on the other hand, he puts down a very nice, comfortable speed. And if you're doing his speed, you usually don't need to put anything extra into it. So I was glad that you got to follow Steve into it. You did pretty good on that creek gap, man. You looked really good.
Yeah, I felt really comfortable when I first was riding up to it. I felt like, oh, I could do this. I could send this. And then then you look at it from the side, it looks a little bit more intimidating because it is a gap.
Yeah.
But we've been jumping enough recently that it's like, this isn't huge. And when I see you do it like with just like 100% confidence, and I'm like, okay, I could definitely do this. It is interesting when you talk about how Brian rides. Brian is a guy who rides. He's got a BMX background, and he's a guy who rides like his intention. It seems like he's just so poppy. It seems like the intention is to be in the air as long as possible. When I ride, the intention is to clear the jump and be in the air as little as possible.
That's right.
So, like, if he's if he's a hot air balloon, like gently floating up over the jump, I'm a cruise missile that's just like going as fast as possible and like just clearing these jumps and I would love to get to that place of comfort in the air. It's something that's been an ongoing conversation in these last few weeks, these last few podcasts about getting comfortable in the air. And on these gap jumps, we did it. I think we did a really great job, but I did not put a move in at all. I felt, whereas on the lippy jumps, it feels like I'm kind of floating more. And then on the gap jump, it felt more like I was, because you were like, you don't need to do anything, just ride off of it. I really didn't boost off of it at all. I'm still not intuitively feeling the landing on any of these things. It's still like, okay, I'm just happy to get over it. What were you thinking? Did you throw any bar turns in?
I think I did throw a few bar turns in here and there, but it's like you said, it's a different feeling going off of a ramped jump with a gap. I think when you have a table underneath you, you kind of feel a little bit more comfortable throwing in moves because you're like, gosh, if I fall up short, not a big deal. These ramps were all gapped. And so if you threw in a move and somehow that sucked up more time than you thought it would and you cased, that could be bad news. So I didn't throw too many moves into it. It was just here and there where I felt really comfortable with it. But we went from that creek gap to the next run, which was unbelievable. This, I forget what they call it, but I think they call it the log gap. And then there's the trail gap. And these gaps get significantly bigger. I think that log gap I think Steve said that was 17 feet and the trail gap is 16 feet. And the log gap is not as high, but it's farther. And the trail gap is shorter, but it sends you up higher. And you did awesome on that one too. And it's much longer than the creek. The creek is, I think, like 12 feet or 14 feet. I forget, but it's significantly shorter than the next move. And it's all about speed. And man, you followed me in and you absolutely killed it. Yeah. You said you felt great.
I did. Just to circle back on the move in the air, we're not doing a move there on these types of jumps. But if you look at Steve and you look at Brian, they are.
Oh yeah.
They're doing moves. Like Steve's doing a tabletop move and Brian's doing his bar turn or a tabletop, or I learned that what I'm starting to do is a tabletop. That's what Josh at Slanted Ground said. So
yes,
it's happening, but these guys are definitely doing moves on these. So it is possible. And I'm sure it's better. And, we know Steve already said that, yes, it's better to do something in the air. So you don't straight line it, which we talked about last week, or become a dead sailor. But yeah, so on that second line that we did, again, you were so confident going in. You were like, there's nothing to it. And so I was just following speed, definitely a little bit nervous, but stay centered and stay focused and start getting in the flow. There's a nice run up to get speed. And you do have to go really fast on these. When you start clearing these bigger distances, the speed gets pretty significant. Like when you're on a trail and you're in your second smallest gear, like you're cooking. You're cooking, you know? Yeah. So,
Yeah. Steve commented on that a couple times.
about how fast we were going.
Yeah. He's like, you guys are cooking it, but that's
That's our technique.
That's how I feel comfortable. Yeah, I don't want to come up short. Like, that's the thing. Like, I would much rather overshoot than undershoot. So, yeah, I mean, talk about those guys doing moves. They're so familiar with these jumps that, they know exactly the right speed to just clear it, what kind of move they have time for. You and I are just like, send it, as hard as you can go and just forget about it,
I felt super comfortable following you. We did notice that because I'm about, is this why? RidenLife1 at Gmail YouTube comments, I'm about 50 pounds heavier than Sage.
Yeah.
I was really catching up to you. And I'm on a 29er, you're on a 27.5. But then I was thinking, like, if that's that big of a difference, then wouldn't it make a huge difference on the weight of downhill racers? Because then wouldn't it just make sense for all downhill racers to be, big guys, or are they?
I mean,
is there any sort of weight requirement, or is there any sort of weight limit? I mean, there's nothing like that, right, for downhill?
No, I don't think I've ever seen an overweight downhill racer. I think at those speeds and that steepness, I don't think it matters. I mean, when you look at these downhill courses, they're pitched pretty steep. I'm not sure that if they're braking, it's because they need to brake. Like, otherwise, they're just off the brakes and they're pedaling their hearts out. These guys and gals, I don't think I've ever seen an overweight downhiller. They're all pretty much in shape, and I just don't know that weight makes that much of a difference.
Yeah, it seems like it doesn't. I've never heard it mentioned whatsoever. Right? Like, that this bigger rider is winning because of their weight. I just think it's interesting, like how quickly I seem to catch up to you in straightaways.
Yeah, and I'm not touching brake. I'm not touching brake. I'm putting cranks in. Yeah.
So then after we did those couple of gaps and felt really comfortable, this trail leads into another trail, a new trail, the first ever Ride and Laugh mountain bike trail, any style. And
yes,
there's a Ride and Laugh mountain bike trail, the first ever. I mean, it is so cool that this trail is named after the podcast. It's named Any Style. If you don't know the Any Style story, go back a couple of podcasts, or you can go into the hot takes and watch the, what do we call it?
Mythical trail at Highland.
The mythical bike trail. Yes. So the Any Style trail. And so this trail is Any Style. And let me tell you, it's got a feature at the end that makes it a black diamond, a double black diamond. What do you think for a trail? It's a big time trail. Feature. It's a big time feature.
It's a badass trail, dude. Can we say that? It is a badass trail. Yeah.
So it is awesome. And let me just say, before you start describing it, Sage and I looked at this thing and we were like, I don't know. And then we're like, but it's named after our podcast.
I know we have to do it.
We're like, we kind of have to ride this. Like we have to figure this out. So go ahead, describe what the second half of this trail is like that is called Any Style Ride and Laugh Mountain Bike Trail.
Yeah, first of all, you're exactly right. My first thought was like, oh, I'm not doing it. And then he was like, it's Any Style. I was like, well, I got to do it. We got to do it. Yeah, this trail, so it connects into the trail that we're just talking about, which is that log over gap, which is the 17-footer, into the trail gap, that is the 16-footer that really sends you high. The very next gap, I don't know what the length of it is, but the tough part of that is it's right on a turn. So you clear the gap and you have to make this sharp right turn. And then you get all the speed that you can get, and it sends you into this like gapped step up is the best way that I can explain it. It's literally a wooden ramp up, and then what is a gap?
It's a wooden ramp. It's a wooden kicker it is perfectly designed.
A kicker, thank you. Yes.
The math on this thing is it's more of a ramp than a kicker. I mean, it is made to send you straight up, and then you land higher than you started. But there's a big gap. There's a big gap in between.
Yeah. And you know me, I am step ups are one of those things that I'm not that good at. So the first thing I saw was, okay, not only is this a step up, but there's a massive gap that you have to clear. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. And then as I'm saying this, Brian comes like flying down the trail and just sends this thing. And I'm like, dude, that looked so easy. And he's like, man, it's no problem. You got this. So I go through my my routine, I'm walking up to it. I do my foot stomp, and I'm like, I don't know. And I'm not a follow guy, but there was no way that I wanted to get the speed wrong on this. I ended up following Brian, and I said, Brian, listen, I know you're a boost guy. I said, please don't boost this. Just send this like you would, pretend you're me.
Oh, okay.
Just send this like a ground panda. I don't know, just ground panda,
like a panda biatch.
Yeah, panda biatch.
You ride like a panda biatch for once in your life?
For once in your life, yeah, panda biatch.
Can
But
you
he's
do
so great.
a dude a favor and ride like a panda biatch? Is that too much to ask? Brother to brother.
Yes.
Can you be a panda biatch? Just for one ride, for one jump.
He did it. He rode like a panda biatch, and it was fantastic, man. As soon as I cleared it, I went nose heavy, by the way. I went really heavy nose, and but it was fine. It was absolutely. I turned around to you. I said, dude, it is butter. I think I did it right away again, just because I just wanted to cement that feel in. I did it by myself, and everything there is just built so well. It's built to trail speed. I mean, how often do we talk about that?
Yes. The angle, the way that this jump is built, the way that the angle is just perfect. Trail Builder definitely knew what they were doing. Really impressive, but it's scary looking. Like I was not sure if I was going to do it. And, you were like, look, this is our trail. So I could see that look. I knew you were going to try it, and I was glad. I was worried for you because it looks scary, and it's not something that we've really done. Like we've never done a wooden kicker step up. The only place that we've done wooden kickers is Phoenixville Bike Park, and on the big jumps we cased those 30 times before we started clearing them. So it's like but so you did it a couple times and felt good, and then we decided that I'm going to do it in the flow of the ride. For whatever reason, I didn't do what you did and just like practice it. We just decided that, okay, Sage did it, and now Dan is good. I don't know what the decision making process was. Why did that happen?
I don't know. I didn't even know I was going to do it, but I you know what? We turned around. We were at the top of the trailhead. I said, you know what? If it feels good, I might go for it. I had no idea you were going to follow me through it, because the problem with the step up is you kind of like land on the top and you have no speed.
Yes. You land on the top and the trail's over. It's done.
Yeah.
You're like done. Casually pedaling at that point. Yes.
Right.
So now you're talking about doing the whole thing. So we go to the top, and I'm going to follow you through the whole thing. And the idea was that you may or may not do the final jump. This was just kind of like a pre-ride, as if I hadn't learned from the week before.
Yes.
And so you were maybe going to do the final jump, the step up jump. And I was probably not going to do it, but let's just see what happens kind of thing. There wasn't really any decision made. And, for me, like I was behind you. We're in the flow. We had already done the first two jumps. And then, so then we continue and we clear the last jump. And it's kind of like this, it's a little bit of a hip jump. It's a little bit of an angle. You have to hit it right to hit the corner so that you can corner with enough speed to keep your speed to then get into this wooden ramp. And I was behind you, and I actually had to brake check a little bit because I'm catching up to you. I'm like right on you, and I'm like catching up to you. But I cleared the jump fine, the hip jump fine, and I saw you like going in with speed to the wooden kicker, and I was like, what the heck? I guess I'll go for it. Except that's not what I was thinking. That thought crossed my mind. And then the next thought crossed my mind was, I'm going to land on top of Sage. He's going to stop, and then I'm going to land on top of him. Like, I don't know how this works. But so you went off it, and you landed it perfectly. I went off it, and I was a little bit back. I was a little bit scared. So just like your first run on it, I went super nose heavy. And luckily just kind of rode it out. It was no big deal, but okay, I could do better than that. I got to do better. And I also noticed that like by you just pedaling once or twice at the end, you totally got out of the way. So I don't know. RideLamp1 at Gmail YouTube comments. Have you ever been worried that you were going to land on another rider on a step up or on any jump? Like, has that ever been crossed your mind where like, I'm too close to this person? So I thought that was like kind of scary, but also kind of enlightening that no, I'm not going to land on top of you. And so then we went back up and we did it again. And this time with the full intent of doing the entire thing. And we were pretty excited after the first one. But then after the second one, we hit everything perfectly. And we hit that last jump. I felt like I hit it perfectly. I arced perfectly. I landed perfectly. Like it was really just awesome. And the Stoke was very, very high. I think Steve was right behind us. Yeah, Steve was right behind us.
Yeah.
So
I know
that was really cool. That was really, really cool. Any style, everybody. We have an any style trail. There's an actual any style trail. And there's a sign. We you have to log on to the YouTube so you can see the sign. We'll put it up. But there is a sign that is going to say any style ride and lift trail. So it's awesome. It's really, really awesome. So thank you to trail builders that put that together and made it any style. And it's an awesome trail. It's really fun. If you're riding Ceres or Ceres, I don't know how you say it. We've heard multiple things. We're just going to say Ceres because that's what Steve and Brian say. We met Vinny later on in the week and he said he lives right near there and it's Ceres and it was named after a moon and certain gods. And that sounded pretty compelling, but I don't know. I don't know about these moons or these gods. I don't know. So anyways, staying on subject.
Dude, that trail and how smooth and well built it was made us feel so confident in our abilities. And we talked about stacking wins before, right? Just stacking wins and you're feeling good. And that led to the most incredible moment. This is a feature I've never thought about hitting. You went and you saw it and you said, no problem. This is the infamous road gap. And Danny, I mean, walk me through what was going through your head on this feature. It was unbelievable.
So the road gap is a really big drop that crosses over a road. And so it's not like a bike park, but to me, it looked very clean. So we get in the car and we were driving to Ceres and we drove together and you're telling me about the stuff that's there. And you tell me about the road gap and you're like, I have no interest in this. This thing looks really scary. And I was like, okay, I knew Steve had ridden it. I had seen video of him riding it before, but I wanted to take a look. But it was interesting that like you kind of had like pre-planned, like, just so you know, this thing looks really scary and I'm not doing it, and I was like, okay, well, I probably won't do it either. And, but so we rode by it and I took a look and it was just one of those things. Like I saw it and I looked at the landing and I was just like, yeah, I could do this. This feels good. I'm pretty sure I could do this. And then it was, do I want to? Am I in the right headspace? This is a high consequence feature. But then I was also thinking, but I'm really good at these. I feel really, and we just talked about riding the big drop at Blue Mountain. We were talking to Steve about the dimensions of this and they were kind of similar. It just looks scarier because it's more narrow and the landing is trail and there's a road underneath it. And it had a little bit of this reputation, but Steve was willing to tow me in. Steve's not a guy that likes to pedal a lot. So, he said it's an uphill. He said it's an uphill. This guy is such a downhill rider. He needs an e-bike stat. He said it was an uphill to get speed. And to me, it felt level, maybe a little bit uphill, but he let it be known. He's like, look, I'm doing this once. I'm not hiking back up. Yeah, I'm not hiking back up and doing this again because once you're down at the bottom, you got to get back up to the top. He's like, this is happening once. So I was like, okay, well, if I do this, if I follow him, I have one shot at it. And so I did a run in by myself, which Sage explained last week. I did a run in. It was just practicing coming up to it and seeing what it feels like as I approach it. And then Steve said, follow me at my speed. And so we set it up. And I did, it took some breaths. I got this and stay centered. And my mantra for drops is stay low and spot the landing. So as soon as I can, I'm spotting the landing and I'm matching the angle of the bike to the landing.
Yeah.
And I've done enough drops that feels very instinctive and intuitive to me and very natural to me at this point. So when I saw the feature, I knew I could do it. And so Steve said he doesn't like to do it very fast. He had his speed. He's done it several times before. I said, hey, man, I'll follow your speed. Like, I trust you. And so we pedaled in. I felt like it was going a little bit on the slow side, and I probably would have gone a little bit faster. But we cleared it perfectly. I mean, he cleared it perfectly, and then I sent it, and as soon as I landed, I mean, it just felt awesome. It just felt so good. I was hooting and hollering, just uncontrollably, like just the Stoke was just so high. It's really big. You're in the air for a while, and then bam, I did it. And then I turn around and I see how big it is, and I was like, oh yeah, that looks really freaking cool. So I was very stoked about it. Yeah, and it felt really good, and you could do it. It's in your wheelhouse. For sure.
Oh yeah. When I looked at it, it reminded me a lot of that Blue Mountain drop that we talked about in the previous episode. It's almost the exact same dimensions, and I do believe it's in my wheelhouse. But you know what? I had my heart and brain set on something else that we'll talk about in the future, and not in the future, later in this episode. So I just, it wasn't something that I was jonesing to hit. And also you didn't say it, but that landing is actually very rooty. So unlike a bike park where you can kind of guarantee a smooth landing, this thing is just, you hit ground and it's just gnarly roots and little gullies from it being washed out and all that. So it's not smooth in that sense. The takeoff is. So it's a little bit of a sniper. I got smaller wheels, and I was just like, I don't even want to chance it. Like I'm here for a purpose, and I'm like laser focused. So I was so stoked to see you do this thing.
I think it's great that you didn't do it. You weren't feeling it, and that's exactly what we talk about is not doing it because we're there. And we just talked about doing any style.
That's right.
That's different. Everybody, come on, right? We had to do any style. Now I'm concerned that other people are going to make Ride and Laugh trails, and they're going to make them really hard and be like, let's see if we can get these guys to ride this. They're going to ride it. Did you hear their last podcast about any style? They're going to ride it. If we make it, you know what? If you make it, we're going to ride it. If you name it after, I don't know what you're going to name the next one. Any style 2 or toot. I don't know. I don't know what you're going to name the next one.
I love that you went like Field of Dreams. Yeah, you were like, if they make it,
we will ride it.
We will ride it.
Yes. Within reason. I mean, it has to be a legitimate trail. Yes. The actual any style trail is a legitimate trail. It's a legitimate trail. Yeah. It's not like something someone built in their backyard and be like, all right, Dan and Sage. So some of those backyard builds are pretty cool too. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So after the road gap, we moved on to the next set of features, which you had ridden 2 of the 3. And it starts with like this janky slow speed drop that sends you into, if you hit the drop like slow enough, it gives you the perfect speed to launch this cannon, which a cannon is just a log that's pretty much facing up into the air at a certain angle. And so that you ride off the cannon. Again, you don't need to do anything. So you do a drop, you do the cannon, and then the cannon sets you up with even more speed, and then you need to pedal for even more speed to hit the last jump in this line, which was on your bucket list for the day. And tell us about this last jump.
Oh my gosh! By the way, you'll often hear this cannon also referred to as a oh gosh, how do I say this cleanly? An erection. Erection.
It's a boner log.
Oh, you can't say boner, can you?
Can you say erection? I think Boner's better. I mean, Boner was a character on TV in the 90s.
So. Yes.
It's a dinosaur bone. What kind of bone are you thinking of?
There you go. But you do hear it. I actually hear it more referenced that boner way than. Yeah. Watch out for the dinosaur bone.
That thing's huge. Oh, yeah. That was like a brontosaurus. I think that was probably a brontosaurus or a T-Rex. That was whatever it was. It was excited, and it was big.
Yeah.
Big.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, I've heard it more that way than I have Canon. But anyway, regardless, this thing sends you smooth right into the next gap, which is 20 feet, which is the largest gap jump that I had ever done. It's not even close because I don't think Frederick was anywhere near that length. So I honestly didn't know how I felt about it, except that I knew I wanted to do it. And when I walked up to it, I started having second thoughts because, man, when you walk up to from the side, it actually doesn't look too bad. It's when you walk up to it and you have to see where you have to land. You're like, oh my gosh, that's quite a distance. And so I started hesitating, but at the same time, I still felt really good about it. Like I just felt like, okay, if I had the speed, and again, because we had been stacking wins and I had not felt uncomfortable on any of these previous gaps, I thought, okay, if I just had the right speed, I think I can send this. And this is a classic Sage. I did not follow anybody into this. I wanted to see Steve and Brian do it. I got a visual of what that looked like. And then I kind of went for it. And it took me about, I would say, we watched them do it.
And Steve even said, like, when you go off the jump, it looks really far away.
Yes, it does.
And then you're in the air for a while, and then it's over. But he even said, like, this is far. It used to be 16 feet. And so then he got a phone call that someone moved it out to 20 feet. And he was like, why'd you do that? But okay.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I took probably about 3 goes at this thing before. So what I wanted to feel, and this is a thing, like this is that we talk about a commitment line, and what is that commitment line? Well, a commitment line for me on a jump is a lot farther back. On a drop, you can make the commitment line almost up to the edge of the drop. If you're doing a slab, you can make the commitment line almost right to the edge of the slab. And the commitment line is once you go past this line, this imaginary line, you are committed to doing it. There's no turning back. And so on a jump like a gap jump where the speed is very critical, the commitment line is very far back for me. And so I did like at least 3 runs into this thing. And that last one felt really good. But up until then, I kind of peeled off, until I kind of felt that like going off of the prehistoric bone. if I didn't feel that landing hit perfectly, I was peeling off. And that 4th one, I said, this is it. I hit it. I caught the backside of the landing and I just went for it, man. I put a couple strokes in and my goodness, it was so, Steve was right. As soon as you crest, you're just like, oh my gosh, I got to go a really far distance. And I got to tell you, Danny, it was so smooth. I turned around and I was like, Dan, it's butter. It's on. Yeah. It was so good.
You went way further than 20 feet, by the way. You went like 25
I was like 24.
feet.
Yeah.
Yes, you were so centered. You were so balanced. You looked really good. And you came away like with a huge smile. You even said there's a little shark fin that's not completely built yet at the end of it. Yes. A shark fin jump, look it up. It's too hard to explain. It's like a half a berm. It looks like a shark fin. And so this thing's half built. There's no landing for it. You set the shark fin afterwards, and there wasn't even there's no landing on it. I could just tell you were fired up and you were in the zone. But yeah, you looked really good. You made it look really good. Did you want to, before I started telling my story, did you want to talk more about you clearing the jump? Was there anything else that you wanted to say? I feel like I interrupted.
No, the point that I really just want to drive home to the listeners was really that commitment line and just that feeling of knowing. And because when the thing is like, these are serious consequences. And we talked about this, on a couple pods ago about like why we do what we do. This is huge. You come up short on a gap, especially front tire short, that could be dunzos, And so you're not, first of all, you should never approach any of these features with that kind of a fear. I looked at this thing and I felt immediately confident. I may be nervous, but I felt confident that this was in my wheelhouse. And the fact that I had stacked up so many wins, there wasn't a doubt. Like I didn't come into this with a doubt. I knew if I had catched the landing that I was going to go for it and I would be safe. I could do this and I would be safe. And that's what I want people to come away with. I don't want you going into this thing and Sage said, commitment line and you just send it. No, it's not about just send it. You got to feel it and it's got to feel good. It's got to feel right. And you got to practice. Yeah. So that's all I would say.
I think that's a really good point and kind of an underrated point about the commitment line. That with all of these features, there's a point where you're like, okay, I'm going for it and I'm full commit. And if you're still hesitant as you approach that commitment line, then bail, pull off.
That's right.
But if you are feeling good and then you hit that commitment line, then it's just full commit. And it's one of the words that I use. It's one of my mantra words that I use, especially on tech. With jumping, I have other keywords that I like in my mind, but sometimes in jumping too, when I know that, okay, I don't need to squeeze the brake going into this jump. I want a brake check. Like everything in my brain is yelling at me to brake check. And it's like, no, commit, commit, commit. You got this. There is no brake check. The speed is right. Go. And so crossing that commitment line, knowing where that is, that's really, really important. And I think that's something that any mountain biker can use and any mountain biker can relate to as well. So I think that's an excellent point. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, how did you feel on this gap jump?
I felt terrible. So, but I did it.
Yes, twice.
I did it twice. So the first time, so I did the first two features, which are, somewhat complicated, but I started to lock it in and feel good on it. And I didn't do any run-ups to the 20-footer. Like I did the first two features, and I think I followed someone in on those. And then I watched you do the 20-footer, so I took a little bit of a break, and then I went back up, and I was like, maybe I'll do a run-up, maybe I'll just go for it. And I hit the drop, and then I hit the cannon, and I hit them both exactly the way I wanted to. I got a couple pedal strokes in before, and I was just like, okay, I'm just going to go for it. And the first time, so Brian was taking video, and that really helped. And what I was joking about this in the beginning of the podcast, that I prefer to, at this point in my jumping career, to clear the jump with as little air as possible. And so the first time, as I'm going over the jump, like my front wheel gets a little bit heavy, and I just barely clear the 20-footer. I just barely clear it, and it was like, whoa. Like, thank you, universe, that worked. But that was not exactly what I wanted to do. And I was like, you know what? I can do better. I want to go back up and do it again. And so what I think I did was I absorbed the jump. So instead of when you boost the jump, you're pushing through the jump with your arms and legs, especially with your legs. Your arms are really just matching the angle of the jump, but you're pushing through it. And when you absorb it, you're letting the jump come up, and you're letting the bike kind of come up into your body so that you don't go as high in the air. And on this jump, it's really far. You need to get up in the air a little bit. And so Brian said, I think you absorbed that. It's like, okay, I need to boost it a little bit. And so the second time around, again, I go right into it. I hit the drop right. I hit the cannon right. I feel like I got the speed right. And I get the same exact feeling. I'm coming up on the jump, and I get the same exact feeling. I just barely cleared it. And I was like, okay, that's that. Like, I'm not doing it again. I just barely cleared it twice. I'm not doing something right. And so then Brian showed me the video. And this time, I just stood up way too early. So instead of boosting into the jump, I really kind of like lost all of that power. I lost all of that leg because I went from low to high. And then I just rode off it. But this time I rode off a little bit tall. So I was even like a little bit dead sailor. And I ended up having the same effect, which was I just kind of missiled across this thing because of my speed. And I went front wheel heavy. I didn't really get that nice arc. It didn't feel comfortable. It was over in a split second. But both times I was like, oh my God. Both times were like, oh crap. This may not go well. I felt like I just kind of snuck out both times. So that was that was nerve-wracking, and it was also, okay, there's still things to work on. I need to be able to work on boosting these gap jumps and boosting these ramp jumps. So there's definitely
two things that really stood out to me, Dan. One of them, and you had just mentioned it, was Brian taking video. I mean, that was, and we talk about this all the time as one of our mountain bike tips, and it's just so helpful to be able to have that video reference. And I think Brian was shooting at like 120 frames, and he really did a slow-mo. And we could really break down frame by frame exactly what was happening, and it allowed you. Now, unfortunately, you overcorrected the second time through because you stood up, but at least you knew what the problem was, and you were wanting to solve that solution. The second thing that I thought was really interesting was, well, actually, there's 3 points I wanted to make, because the second thing that I thought was really interesting was you didn't follow somebody, and you're a follow guy. So I guess you felt really confident about the speed going in. The problem wasn't the speed, right?
No, the problem was not the speed. And you had told me, go as fast as you can. Like, that's all I needed to know. Like, the speed is go as fast as you can. I just got, I got a little bit scared. What I was saying to myself, stay centered. It's throughout all the other gap jumps, the whole day, I was just saying, stay centered. Don't lean back. Stay centered. And I still default to leaning back a little bit. And I felt like I stayed centered on this one. I was stay centered, but just because it's so big, I think because I went back a little bit, maybe I just didn't. I don't know. I don't know exactly.
I disagree,
just
Danny.
Took it more cautiously, subconsciously. It wasn't like a conscious decision. I felt like I hit it like the rest of the ones that day.
I here's my theory. And by the way, when I went back through all the footage, because as soon as we got back, we collected everyone's footage, and I start going through you actually did this move of absorbing the lip of the ramp on every single one in different varying degrees. The difference with this is it's 20 feet, whereas the other ones we were cooking really fast, but at 17 and 16 feet, you couldn't see the negative outcome of it because you weren't absorbing it that much. But on that 20 feet, you needed every bit of height that you could possibly get. And, that's where I think it happened. But what I wanted to say was you absorbing the lip of that ramp is exactly why you are so much more confident at the bike park where you do have a lippy jump and you're able to absorb that lip and your confidence in the air on these bigger bike park style jumps is very good. And I think that's where you and I are different. On the ramp jumps, I don't do anything. I literally ride this thing. I don't boost. I literally ride it like a drop and just let the bike do the work. Whereas you're actually activating this thing that you've learned on these bike style jumps to absorb the lip. And that actually hurt you in this case. What do you agree? Do you disagree?
I do agree. Yeah, it's something that we talked about on the ride home, and I had kind of forgotten that I had read about this technique on how to absorb jumps, or I probably watched a YouTube video on it, and I remember learning this technique to absorb the lip of the jump so that I could clear the jump, but not necessarily be sky high because I'm just not comfortable with that yet, and I kind of forgot that I did that, and then it really came to light on these ramp jumps where I'm absorbing them and I'm just kind of like I'm just lasering across the gap and I'm not really arcing in the air tremendously. Whereas on the bike park style jumps, because the angle of the jump, even when I absorb it, I'm still getting like that nice arc and I'm going
that's right
high enough. If I'm clearing the jumps, especially like Upper Empire, those jumps are huge. If I'm clearing those jumps, I'm going high. I could go higher. I mean, I rode behind Keaton. I rode behind Logan. I've ridden behind guys that are, boosting these jumps and at the same speed, just going much, much higher. And I don't have that dialed in yet on how to do that. And I'm certainly not comfortable with it. So I think it's just more repetition and it's just more repetition. And on the gap jumps, doing it on smaller jumps where I'm like, okay, let me start to get it, purposely try to get higher in the air, but not go further.
Could you hit the gap jumps and treat it like a drop? Because when you're doing a drop, you don't do anything, right? You're not absorbing the lip of the drop, right? I literally hit these gap jumps as if I was hitting a drop. Like I might have like a little bit of compression. I'll have to look at the video, but in terms of the ramp itself, I don't do anything. I literally and it does send you pretty high in the air, but that's the nice thing is it's brainless. It's kind of like autopilot.
Yeah, I understand that, but I think I want to be able to jump like Brian. I want to be able to jump like Steve. I want to be able to get in the air and make a shape. I want to be comfortable up there. I want to have fun up there, right? Like Steve said, we actually like it up there,
that's my point. But that's my point. Like if you hit this like a drop, it would send you up in the air because you're not doing anything. Right now, you're absorbing the lip of that ramp and that's straight lining you. If you just hit this like a drop and you did nothing, it would literally send you at the angle of the ramp up into the air. Like you get really high.
Okay, so I see what you're saying. I'm doing like a negative move. You're saying to just stay neutral, and I'm saying I want to be positive.
Yes.
You're like, well, how about instead of like going positive, maybe you just try neutral first and see what happens.
That's right.
Maybe
how neutral feels. Yeah.
Let's start walking before running. I'm like, yeah, but I want to be doing backflips, dude. What the heck? Why are you trying to limit me? Yeah, fair enough. No, I approach it. Maybe it is like a drop, or maybe it's just trying not to absorb. And the thing is, I go into some of these bike park jumps, and I'm boosting. I am full boosting because I know I'm not going fast enough.
I got another question for you. You notoriously always say that you're a one move guy. I don't know if we've ever talked about this on the podcast. I feel like we have. That any style line and that line that we just talked about with the 20-foot gap, those are several moves. And actually, the any style line, and I don't know if the whole thing is called any style, it doesn't matter. There's actually enough space in between each move that I think you can refocus yourself. But on this 20-foot gap line, there's not much time in between each thing. How did you morph yourself from a one move, one feature guy to a 3 feature thing? I mean, that's incredible.
Well, first of all, I didn't do the last one all that great, so I can't like golf clap myself to victory here. I did. I did do it. I did do it. Yeah. And I felt good going into it. So everyone, I've always considered myself a one move guy because we joke around that, especially on tack, when there's like you do this and then you go here and you ride this skinny and then you ride this log and then you got this you got this slab and then a left into this chunk. And I would be like, well, I can do one of those things, but like if I have to like focus on doing all of them, eventually I would like forget or put a foot down or just not take the wrong line. So I always joke around that I was a one move guy, but hey, I'm limitless. I'd like to move into multiple moves and staying in the flow, staying present, just trusting my ability, trusting my skills. And if I stay centered, I'll be okay. And ultimately I was, even though I did not hit this jump right twice, and I was okay. I had the skill to ride it out and walk away. And we had a great breakfast. It was lunch. It was actually almost dinner. It was late, but we uninjured is my point. Like, that's what I want. I want everyone back at the lot, having a good time, talking Stoke. And so we actually got back to the parking lot and we spent like another 20 minutes talking bikes. And I was like, guys, you know what we're doing right now? We're back at the lot. The Stoke is high. We're talking bike. Well, I was going to do a podcast right now. Yeah, it totally happened. Yeah. And it happens all the time. I mean, that's I think that's why everyone listens, right? We all just love talking bikes and being stoked. So, Sage, what's your mountain bike gratitude of the week?
Man, if this is yours, I apologize, but I got to tell you, mountain bike gratitude to Brian and Steve. I mean, I am just, that day doesn't happen without those two, and first of all, Steve is great to follow. Brian gives the best advice. This guy is so calm. He instructs with Jeff Lenoski. I mean, that's how good and talented is. He is a instructor with Jeff Lenoski's. I forget what his what's Jeff call his classes? It's like Trail Boss Academy. Trail Boss Academy.
Yeah.
Like he instructs with Jeff. So you like right then and there, that just shows the credibility that Brian has. But his patience, right? Like his patience to just stick with us and take the videos. Like. He's there to ride too, but he's there. He's taking videos. He's giving us advice. He's encouraging us. Steve, he doesn't love to climb. He's going back up and he's doing runs with us, and showing us the speed and give us an encouragement. That day doesn't happen without those two. And I am so grateful. Like this literally happened last minute. And for both of them to be available, gratitude, bro. Gratitude.
I couldn't agree more. They're both awesome guys, and the fact that they could both be there, and Brian, so friendly, B&E MTV, check him out on his channel as well, and you can look these guys and Ben Spokes, you can look them up on Instagram. They both have YouTube channels. Yeah, they're just such nice guys. My gratitude of the week, I was going to use probably Steve and Brian, but I'm just going to pivot to any style trail. Like the fact that the podcast is like resonating with people and people are excited about the podcast. We're meeting people and they're excited to ride with us. And everyone that we've met is so awesome and so cool. And so the fact that there is now a trail called Any Style after that ridiculous story where I got Any Style confused with Any Style, it's just so awesome. The Ride Live podcast, it's happening. Thank you, Trail Builders. It's an awesome trail. It's so fun. That whole place is awesome. So thank you, Trail Builders, for the whole place. Everyone that goes and puts the work in, I kept saying to Steve, like, it's so cool that you have this resource here. And he's like, you keep saying resource. Like, we built this. This isn't a resource. You know, like, this didn't just develop. It's, you know, we put a lot of work into this. You know, all the local riders there. So and builders. So yeah, thanks to everybody. And Any Style is an actual trail. Ride and Laugh podcast first trail. It is so cool. So.
Danny, I got to say, resource is kind of right on brand. You did just call your own home a facility, so it's not that far off.
Yeah, I'm at my Phoenix compound. People are going to be like, who's this guy?
What's going on over there? Yeah. Well, my mountain bike tip is, I guess it's a little bit of a stretch. I don't know if I can relate it to the ride in some way, except that I did bring my hydration pack. I didn't end up needing it because it was so nice out that day. It was just like 70 degrees. Now, one of the problems with the hydration pack, we talked about the sloshing, but is the emptying out and drying. So how do you dry your bladder? And this is, I don't know where I picked this up, but when you empty out your bladder, there's always like residue in the bladder. Am I correct?
You have to say hydration before you say bladder every time. You can't just say bladder.
Before I empty out my bladder.
Everyone's like, yeah, thanks for the tip on taking a leak. I'm pretty sure I got that dialed in. Ooh, tips on peeing. Oh, good. I haven't been emptying the bladder all the way. I've been leaving it like a half full. This is going to be really useful.
You're so right.
I'm sitting here chuckling. You're saying bladder. I'm just like chuckling to myself. Like, hydration bladder.
Oh my goodness.
Hydration bladder. Yes.
Hydration bladder. Okay, so how do you get this thing fully dry? The hydration bladder, it has the hose, but there's also the spot that you fill it is usually a pretty large opening. Now, if you have the Usui, I think has the top that opens up completely. So you have a big hole at the top. Mine, it's a Camelback. There's a little circle, but the opening is very large. Take a glass cup or a plastic cup, put it inside that opening, let it drop all the way to the bottom of the bladder. That keeps the bladder open. So if you don't do that, what happens? The bladder collapses on itself. The liquid just stays in there until the next time you use your bladder. Well, I don't use my bladder for the rest of the week. So sometimes it's there for a week or two before I use it again. By putting a cup in there, it lets the air circulate in there. So suck out all the liquid in the hose. This sounds terrible. Get all the liquid out of your hose.
I got news for you. If I can suck my own hose, I'm not mountain biking.
Jeez Louise. Oh,
I'm going to be a little late, guys. Oh no, this is a Patreon episode now. This is a blue episode.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
All right. So yes.
Make sure everything's dry. This is a good tip. Getting back on track. You don't want that hydration bladder to get moldy. If it gets stuck together while it's drying, the water will stay in there. It will get moldy. Find something to prop it open so that the air can circulate. It can dry.
That's right.
I have we have like a banana holder. You know, there's like little hooks for like a bananas on your counter.
What?
And and so I've turned the hydration pack upside down on top of like anything that'll prop it open. So I've turned it upside down on that thing. So like, and that keeps it open so that the air gets through. The other thing that you can do is you can just throw it in your fridge if you do that, or your freezer, but then it takes up space. And if you throw it in the freezer, it does get a little bit crunchy.
Danny, you can use the hose. I've done that too. When we're on trips, I'll actually take the hose, disconnect it, put it in through the bladder hole at the top, and that the hose opens up enough space that it airs it out too. So if you don't have a cup, that's how you dry out your bladder. It'll be ready to go. Keep that mold and mildew out of there, and we're good to go.
All right.
Yes.
Good tip. It got a little bit blue there. I apologize to everybody, but good tip.
Banana holders, yeah. Woo. Hey now.
All right. Well, if you're still listening, if we haven't lost it yet, you're definitely one of us. You love mountain biking. There's no doubt. Your stoke is high. We appreciate you. Please rate and subscribe on your podcast player. Please rate and subscribe on your YouTube player. Hit the little notification bell. Have an awesome week of riding. Send us emails. Send us comments. We love you. We appreciate you. Everybody have a wonderful week. Ride and laugh.
I'll see you, everyone.